Joining me now, Missouri Senator Josh Hawley. Senator, the White House wants to put you in a box. If you want to send money to the people of Maui, you also have to vote to send money to support the war in Ukraine. So what's your move?
My move is to say that the only nation building we ought to be doing, Laura, is building this nation. And I can't believe that it's so hard for the White House when asked about, are we going to first support our citizens who are in the midst of a natural disaster and have all these needs, or first prioritize the citizens of some other country? They can't just say America? Why is it so hard? Why isn't the answer, oh, yeah, of course, we're going to start with Americans because this is the United States of America. They seem to forget who they're serving, who they have been elected to serve. Listen, this is not hard. We should be prioritizing Americans first. We should be rebuilding this nation, and we should not be engaged in this wild nation-building endeavors overseas like Ukraine, like Afghanistan, like Iraq. These people have learned nothing.
I don't think you can have it both ways. I mean, if you're concerned about the president's ability to do his job, and I am, and a lot of Republicans say they are, then you've got to be concerned when it's somebody from your own party, right? I mean, it can't be sauce for the goose, but not for the gander. Is he able to do the job? I mean, he's going to have to answer that question. Do I think he should be a leader? No.
All right, guys. So we got to talk about some things that are going on in Congress that I think are some very fascinating developments within the GOP. And it looks like Mitch McConnell's leadership in the Senate is crumbling as Republicans are revolting against the old guard, okay, the neocon conservative wing of the party that wants to fund endless wars. You finally have some senators with some cojones stepping up and challenging Mitch McConnell's throne. I mean, the guy basically is in the same boat as Joe Biden in regards to cognitive impairment, right? I mean, he's had multiple kind of mini strokes, so it seemed, in public while giving interviews. And again, he just doesn't look good. He doesn't look like somebody that should be leading the Republican Party in the Senate, just like Joe Biden doesn't look like somebody that should be leading the country in the White House. Now, again, Mitch McConnell is probably literally and figuratively slowly losing his mind because, again, there's a revolt against Mitch McConnell in the Senate against some Republicans who are stepping up to challenge Mitch McConnell and the traditional GOP Republican orthodoxy. For example, Josh Hawley, the senator from Missouri, who is my favorite senator. Okay, I love Josh Hawley. I think that Josh Hawley is amazing, and I would love to see him be president one day, right? I'm hoping that he runs for governor of Missouri and then ascends to the White House, right? I really do like Josh Hawley a lot. He's challenging Mitch McConnell by trying to take away the funding that Mitch McConnell gets that he uses to rig the outcome of GOP primaries in his favor by proposing a bill that would ban publicly traded companies from funding political campaigns. Okay, it would limit corporations giving to campaigns. Okay, and of course, Mitch McConnell is fuming over this, right? Behind closed doors, he's warning GOP senators that they'll face an incoming challenge from the right if they back Josh Hawley's bill, which would essentially take away all of Mitch McConnell's power, okay? Because despite him being cognitively impaired, his ability to fundraise is still unmatched, right, in the Senate. And that is why these guys line up behind him and everything that he wants in his agenda, because they're controlled by the money, right? And that's just kind of how politics works. Josh Hawley is actually proposing solutions to fix the corruption in our politics. And clearly, corrupt Mitch McConnell does not like that. All right. Also, what Mitch McConnell doesn't like is the new Speaker of the House, Mike Johnson, who is also challenging some GOP orthodoxy when it comes to funding foreign conflicts overseas. Now, as you guys should know, Joe Biden has proposed over $100 billion in additional aid for Ukraine, Israel, and Taiwan. Okay, essentially, we're back to nation building and funding foreign wars and, you know, spending unlimited money on these conflicts. Again, like Ukraine, which according to the Heritage Foundation has cost American households $900 a piece, right? So out of every American household, we've paid $900 to fund the war in Ukraine, okay? That is money coming out of our pockets that we're sending overseas to fight other people's wars and to protect their borders while our borders are wide open. So what Mitch McConnell is upset about is the fact that Speaker Mike Johnson wants to take a different approach, right? He wants to bundle the aid that we're considering giving to Israel, which I think is around $14 billion, with cuts to the IRS to offset the aid that we're giving to Israel. Okay, and when it comes to Ukraine, Speaker Mike Johnson wants to couple that with border security, right? So basically what he's saying is that, look, if you guys want to fund these foreign wars overseas, then one, we need to offset the cost by cutting from something here in the United States, the IRS, and by increasing security for our own border, right, in regards to funding. And we're not talking about funding the paperwork process that Joe Biden does to bring the illegals into the country. We're talking about actual border security, right, to secure the border. We need to do those things if you want more funding for your wars overseas. Now, Mitch McConnell clearly does not like this, right? He doesn't like this. And again, he is basically slowly losing his mind, having a meltdown over the proposal of Mike Johnson, because his fellow senator colleagues are basically coming after Mitch for undermining Mike Johnson and this proposal. Take a look.
You say to Senator McConnell's demand to include Ukraine funding as part of the supplemental?
You know, I think he's wrong. I think that if you contrast it with his opinion during the debt ceiling deal, he was like sort of hands off, we got to wait and give the House room. Sort of the opposite approach here, and I think that the House does need to be given room. As we all saw, it's a difficult position to win the Speaker's race over there, and to win it, you got to keep your coalition together on what you do. And so I think the Speaker is smart to separate out the Israeli aid. I think he's also, frankly, smart to do the conservative thing and actually pay for it by taking money from somewhere else in the budget. So I think it's very popular with the conservative base at home, and I think the Speaker's made the right decision. And I think ultimately, if the Senate tries to send something else over there, it'll be dead on arrival.
McConnell is undercutting Speaker Johnson's position?
I think he's attempting to, and I think it's a mistake because it's also in defiance of most conservatives in the Republican Party. So I think McConnell's position is very, very unpopular, both in Kentucky, but also very, very unpopular across the United States. And I think ultimately will fail or bring down the Speaker, which I don't think is a good idea.
Thanks for your time.
Critics who oppose your advocacy for Ukraine. Senator Paul said that you were trying to undercut the new Speaker of the House. Senator Hawley called your position a, quote, mistake.
Well, let me just say that conceptually, Senator Schumer and I are in the same place in the sense that we view all of these problems as connected. Ukraine is part of it. Obviously, Israel enjoys overwhelming support, but we think it's also important that we have a part related to Asia, and that's Taiwan. And then, as several of my members have underscored, we think it's important to do something credible about our own border, which is basically wide open. So conceptually, I think Schumer and I are in the same place. In terms of the details, what is really needed to protect the border? Not a bunch of money going to Chicago and New York, but something seriously drafted. And we were working on that, and I think the Democrats will have to accept a really serious U.S.-Mexico border protection bill in order to get our people on board for a comprehensive approach.
But it seems like there's disconnect between you and some of your Republican members, specifically on the Ukraine issue, not so much on the border.
Well, I don't have to explain to you. The form that the bill takes will be determined by the majority leader. And we'll see after that whether there are amendments offered and how they turn out. I'm just speaking for myself. I think we need to address all four of those areas in a credible way.
Leader McConnell.
What is your reaction to the House Speaker's Israel-only bill?
Well, that's an opinion many people have. It's not surprising, but in order to make a law, it has to pass both bodies and be signed by the president. And we'll see if the bill comes out of the House, and if so, what kind of margin it has. My own view, I just expressed, is that we need to treat all four of these areas, all four of them: Ukraine, Israel, Taiwan, and the border.
Yeah, so you seen that, you heard that. Okay, Mitch wants to do all four at the same time, aka he only really wants to do three, right? He don't really want to do the border, right? He throws the border in there. That's like some red meat, where it's like, I want to do the border too. You don't understand. Let's do all four at the same time. Doing all four at the same time is basically a way for Mitch McConnell to try to pressure Republicans into really getting on board with three. And the three is not the border, it's Israel, Ukraine, and Taiwan. And then we'll do the border later, right? That's what Mitch actually really wants to do, right? He doesn't really care about the border that much. A lot of these Republicans really don't care about the border that much. It's just talk, right? It's just talk. Okay, because if they actually cared about the border, they would have done more about it when Trump was in office and they had the actual power to secure the border, right? I mean, I'm talking about secure it properly, not just through the way that Trump did it, which is determined through, strong language and having policies, executive policies, to try to deter illegal immigration, right? We need actual holistic immigration reform to secure the border. It takes an act of Congress. I'm not convinced that Republicans like Mitch McConnell actually really want to do that, right? Because he is pro-big business, which is, I think, part of the reason why a lot of these Republicans don't really want to do anything about the border, right? It's cheap labor. So with that being said, it's not just Mitch McConnell who is opposed to Speaker Mike Johnson's proposal to tie Israel and IRS funding together, or cuts to IRS funding. You have the mainstream liberal media also having a full-blown meltdown over Speaker Mike Johnson's proposal. Take a look.
We understand what's at stake here, and I hope that everyone will put politics aside, get that bill over the line. We're going to have pay-fors in it. We're not just going to print money and send it overseas, because the other concern we have that is overriding this is our own strength as a nation, which is tied to our fiscal stability, and that's a big problem that we have as well. We have to keep it in mind as we try to help everyone else.
If the bill passes the Republican-controlled House, the IRS provisions are all but guaranteed to be rejected by the Democratic-led Senate and the White House, setting up a clash over how to approve the aid to Israel and, of course, leaving Ukraine out of the conversation.
Well, of course, leaving Ukraine out. Michael Still, though, I mean, it's...
Great start.
Remarkable how tone-deaf my former party is. They are actually putting billionaires between the protection of Israel and the United States Congress. They are slashing funding for the IRS to go after billionaire tax cheats.
But Johnson's plan is not as standalone as advertised. In order to pay for the Israel aid, Johnson actually wants to cut $14 billion from the IRS. Fewer agents, he says. It seems odd and really unrelated to link the IRS to emergency aid for Israel. Unless you watch enough right-wing media, the IRS is one of its favorite boogeymen. Democrats, though, call this disgraceful, a non-starter, offensive, a poison pill, problematic, and ridiculous. But politics aside, here is the reality. The $14 billion is part of an $80 billion investment designed to ensure that the ultra-wealthy and corporations don't skip out on paying their taxes. Tax enforcement is actually a big revenue driver for the government without raising taxes, according to the Nonpartisan Tax Foundation. It's been popular with every president since Ronald Reagan. And according to the Congressional Budget Office, which is also nonpartisan, investing in this enforcement at the $80 billion level was estimated to actually raise $200 billion in revenue over the next decade. So if you hamper those efforts, it's possible that this would end up actually costing the U.S. even more in lost revenue beyond the sticker price. Now, according to the Committee for a Responsible Federal Budget, also nonpartisan, defunding tax enforcement by $14 billion to pay for new spending, the House will actually add more than $30 billion to the debt.
Guys, don't you love Washington math, right? The only place where, again, if you cut spending, okay, you're cutting spending, somehow, some way that adds to the debt, right? By cutting spending. Now, here's the thing. I don't think that taxpayer money or the American citizens' money, I don't think it belongs to the IRS, right? And I love how Abby Phillips uses straight liberal talking points about how Biden and his IRS agents, right? His 80,000 IRS agents that he wants to hire. Oh, well, that's for going after rich tax cheats. When that's just simply not the case, because if you ask any accountant, right, that has wealthy clients, they're going to tell you that there's no way that some new hire at the IRS is going to beat them in regards to taxes, right? Because an experienced accountant is going to outperform some new IRS agent every day of the week, right? You hire new IRS agents not to go out to people who can afford good quality accountants. You hire IRS agents to go out to people who don't have accountants at all, right? Or that just have the bare minimum, okay? That use TurboTax, right? That's what you hire IRS agents for. The IRS agents that you use to go out to rich folks, they're actually like real legitimate, highly paid, highly experienced accountants, right? Not new hires, right? Not people that you're getting off the street and training to go after the rich. Again, it's nonsense. It's absolutely nonsense, okay? These people, again, they're really advocating for the American people to pay more in taxes, right? They want you to pay more so that we can continue to send our money overseas. Now, do I think that Speaker Mike Johnson's proposal is perfect? No. You know what I'd much rather see? I'd much rather see this cut to the IRS and no spending, right? No money go overseas to anybody, right? Because these ain't our wars to fight, in my opinion, okay? Especially Ukraine, right? So that's ideally what I would like to see. But again, if we are going to send money overseas, we do need to cut from somewhere to balance it, right? Now, again, is it ideal? No, because we need major cuts, right? And this is where I kind of, again, disagree with the Republican Party, because even, the most fiscally conservative conservatives don't want to say the obvious, which is that we need to cut defense spending too, right? We need to stop spending so much on defense, right? And the money that we do spend on defense, we need to spend it on defending the southern border, okay? We need our government to be more efficient in regards to our spending, because we're $33 trillion in debt, and we're not going to be able to cut into that debt unless we significantly reduce the deficit, right? We have to actually start generating money, right? Income, okay? We have to stop deficit spending. And you're never going to get there just by cutting non-defense spending. You got to cut entitlements, and you got to cut defense. You got to have cuts across the board. That's the honest to God truth. That's the honest to God truth, okay? And we as the American people already pay enough taxes. I don't think we should have to pay more taxes when we should just be cutting spending, right? And we can boost tax revenues through economic growth, which is a fact that progressives always leave out when talking about the Trump tax cuts, right? The fact that revenues went up after the tax cuts took effect because, ding, 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 the Trump tax cuts created economic growth. That economic growth resulted in more production, more GDP, okay, more economic output, which resulted in what? More tax revenue collected by the government, okay? So you can boost tax revenues without actually increasing taxes through economic growth. That's how you boost tax revenues. We need to cut spending, okay? And I think the first place to start is to stop giving his money overseas, right? Now, again, we got to protect our southern border. We need to do that, okay? That spending is necessary, but it should not go to paperwork processing and all that garbage. It should go to actually, defense spending at the border, right? We actually need to reallocate that defense spending that we spend, overseas, occupying other countries, and occupy our southern border, right? So the illegals can stop coming in. But again, that's not going to happen. They'll never happen, right? That's a non-starter in Washington, right? Real solutions are non-starter in Washington, right? They don't actually really want to tackle the debt, Democrats or Republicans. Let's keep it 100. Okay? But then again, hey, I think what Speaker Mike Johnson is doing, I think he's trying, right? It's a marginal improvement over Kevin McCarthy, and that's what I expected, right? I didn't expect him to go in and change the world, but I do find it hilarious how he's already triggering Republicans like Mitch McConnell and the liberal media and Democrats by simply saying, okay, well, if we're going to send money overseas, let's offset it with some cuts, right? And they're already said, nah, we can't do that, right? Again, it really blows my mind. Again, the conversation about cutting spending, like, it's almost, both parties are not serious as a whole. They're just not serious about it. It's just talk, right? While we continue to drive this country into debt and basically dooming future generations and destroying the power of the dollar, right? It really is a sad thing to witness. But hey, let me know what you guys think. Make sure you like, comment, and subscribe. Most importantly, share a Black conservative perspective. Peace.